Very good. So great to see you all here today after the keynote. Hope you enjoyed that. We're here to learn about and consider the importance of purpose. So purpose for organisations, of course, there's lots of value to be had there. It helps customers discern the difference between you and your competitors and choose you. Helps alignment, of course, with employees. It helps attract the right talent. But it is I think fair to say, a very difficult thing to kind of boil down in many situations. So we're really lucky to have here today. We have Steve from a company called Dasney, I believe. That is actually a lead-in who will be talking to us about how they have explored the purpose of their organisation. And also Ben is joining us today. And one is looking at kind of a top-down way of defining purpose and making use of that. And the other is a case study looking from bottom up. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you to correct my pronunciation.
Thank you very much, Rib. Cheers. Well, thank you. First things first, obviously never walk in front of the projector. I break all the rules. I don't care about that stuff. So yes, that's the first thing we get asked, actually. These letters, what is it? How do you say that kind of thing? It's DAZN. And the really cool way of thinking of it is if you're down with the kids, you're in DAZN. The reality is it wasn't. I think a few beers were involved when we said, oh, it's DAZN or something like that. That's where it's from. Not massively well known in the UK yet, unless you're into boxing, but we are a global company. So rather than me waffle, what I'll do is I'll show you a quick vid and give you an idea of who we are. That's how you say it's DAZN, and that's what we're about. Not massively well known here in the UK, but that will grow. From a global point of view, we are massively known in Japan, Italy, Spain, Germany, Switzerland, Austria. I could go on. So that's the sales pitch over, just to give you an intro as to who we are. But from my perspective, part of this is about what my role is now and how it's developed over the last year to 2 years. So I came on board, I was a learning development manager, head of learning development. And then I changed my title in conjunction with my boss about 18 months ago. So that's why I'm now head of people development. And that meant something completely different to us then. So my role, in fact, traditionally would all be around learning, training, and coaching and all of those things. But people development to us means something completely different. So it's not just about learning and development. It's so much more than that. And we recognized when we had a change of CEO, just over 12 months ago, that we had an opportunity to listen to what the CEO was saying in terms of the direction of the company, but then start to think about how do we help people understand how they contribute to that strategy, to the vision, to the mission. Because it's easy when you get people who are close to that video, i.e. they produce content, they have something tangible that they can see on a platform, they talk to customers in terms of service and support. Very easy for them. But what if you work elsewhere in the business where you can't see those tangible results? So we decided to kind of reshape my role, broaden my role a little bit and think, What does this one word mean? So, as I say, the role of learning development overall, and in terms of a function, by the way, we started in 2015, we launched first in 2016, massive rapid growth in all of those territories. You need an L&D function that can support that. There's over 2,000 people globally in 20 different countries. We operate in 200 plus countries. So the actual learning development function is stood right here now. So you have to do things cute and smart, and you have to enable people, you have to empower people, so you have to help them set their objectives, set their goals, and start to understand how they contribute. So now this word is support. My role is to support people. Yes, that includes learning. Yes, it includes training. Yes, it includes coaching, mentoring, all the things, all the great stuff that we're hearing all around here for the last few days. But also, it's now the word support. So how do we support people in understanding how the word Rob used earlier on, how they contribute? So this is looking at the CEO vision, mission, and strategy, and how do we get people to be able to understand what that means to me, or to you, or to you, or to you. Because it's different depending on which function you work in within a business. So it's not just learning development, it's about how we support people across a whole journey. So my role now is not to just look at a training piece or what we do with e-learning or what we do with some coaching. It's now, how do I support this whole employee journey? So what role do I play in supporting the teams that go and discover our new DAZNers? What role do I play in ensuring that we have a process that is smooth for somebody who wants to become a new DAZNer? What do I play then? This is where the traditional stuff starts, by the way, you know, where we do some training, that onboarding thing and induction. But it all starts before that. So now my role is to work with the specific parts of the business that look after that part of the employee journey, and how can I help them understand that how we can make it a much more engaging process for anybody going through that process. We then get into what I would call the more traditional version of learning development, which is from day one. We start the training, we do the inductions, we do the onboarding. But we want to do it in a slightly different, more engaging way. There's a place for sitting in a room for 3 hours listening to the history of the company. There's a place for understanding what it is you're going to do in your first week and in your first month, and that's absolutely fine. But we wanted to look at how we could do it slightly differently and not just have to sit in a room for 3 hours. So usually, the old role, by the way, the old version of the role was to get to this point, someone who's fully equipped, end of probation, L&D ride off into the sunset. We've done our piece, hand off to the world. You know, you can go and develop, you can go and deliver, you can go and do your job. But it's not about that. It's also now about helping our managers and helping our leaders understand, okay, what are these four are they hexagons? Is it hex? 6? Yes, I think. How do we help people develop and grow in role? Now, that's really important, because that's where I started on the reshaping of my role. Growing the role, making it something different today than what it was 3 or 4 years ago. But then, how do we recognize people more effectively? How do we share those successes as stories not only across the business, but external to the business as well? And there's a rationale for that. And then helping people understand how their deliverables have impacts was one of the key things we started to shape in the last 12 to 18 months. Helping people understand how they contribute. And then people will leave the business. You know, sometimes we have great success stories, but we don't have a role that they can fulfill, so we help them get a role somewhere else. But how can we capture that story? Because if we can capture that story of somebody who's contributed amazingly, been successful, delivered in their role for DAZN, that then becomes a story that we can use right back over here as well and tell people what a great place it is for development. So my role is to span across this journey and think, how can we join all of these things up to make it as seamless and engaging as possible for anybody who's considering joining DAZN. So my end goal is that people get to a point where they know they've contributed well, they know the part they're playing, and we either have another bigger role for them or a more exciting role for them or something they're interested in. And I'll give you an example. I've recruited somebody in the last 2.5 weeks. They started in an L&D role. So it's going to be an L&D advisor, exec type role. It's on an apprenticeship program, 18 months. Within 2.5 weeks, they're like, I love this content creation team over here, Steve. I love what they're doing. I'm really excited about that. I think, well, I'm going to have to re-recruit in 6 months, and they're going to be on apprenticeship programs. But what a headache to have, though. If somebody's getting excited about the possibility of how they can contribute to the business in 6 months' time, I don't mind having that headache if I can bring in another amazing person. They came on board because they saw the story of Viv who left that we put on our careers website. That's why they applied. After 18 months, I finally kind of knew that it was working because we'd done the whole end-to-end piece. So it's not just about learning and development, it's about how we support people through that whole learning journey. But one of the things we talked about in the description of this session was what the CEO says. So Shai Segev is our CEO, and we've all got versions of this, I'm sure. You know, it's stuff that we put on our intranet, it's stuff that we talk about in town halls all of the time, and it's stuff that we at C-suite, at exec level, at -1, -2, we hear these messages all the time. And it's great, this. How cool would it be if we became the ultimate daily destination for sports fans around the world? You pick your phone up in the morning if you're interested in sport. What do you think? I'll go on my DAZN app. I'll go and watch some sport, watch some highlights, watch some... And by the way, to work in DAZN, you don't have to like sport, because the people who create that, they're very, very clever expert people. They're technical people. They're engineers. They're web developers. They're all sorts of clever people. But it does help because we talk about it a heck of a lot. It really does. So to become an indispensable part of our sports fans' lives globally is what we're aiming for. We need to create a platform that does that. We need to create a platform that delivers those numbers and that video, in essence. So how do we help people understand that? What we need is to be able to translate that and articulate it in a way that means something for every different function and market that we have in the business. Now, there's one group of people where it's really easy. So Shai's strategy to deliver that is deliver market success. Have you ever been told, be successful? Great, okay, I'll trot off over here and I'll just try and be successful. That'd be cool. Evolve the experiences. Another one. Yeah, okay, so how evolve, I get that. What's the start point? What's the experience I'm contributing towards? How are we going to evolve all of that? There are some teams, as I say, who will absolutely get this straight away. But ultimately, and this is a kind of sliding time thing, they're all running together, but become this destination platform. That's what we're aiming for. So, those teams that get this, it's great for DAZN, by the way. If we can do all of that as a business, as an organization, we become that indispensable part, you know, we're achieving stuff now. You know, the brands out there, the names out there, we're getting recognized for this. But what does this mean for the individuals involved? So, think of that video, and all of these teams and more go into enabling us to create a video like that. So we have teams who work literally pitch side, court side, ring side, filming events, producing events, doing the interviews. They're actually there with the live content. We have teams who are creating documentaries, who are making films with the talent. So they know how they're contributing, because that's going to end up on the platform. We then have to get that content, be it on demand, original created content, or live content. We need to get it out to the platform which sits on one of these. And we have to do that globally. So we have teams who have to schedule when those events are going out. They have to plan and coordinate when that content will be available. They have to send it to the right place. You've got to be really careful when it comes to rights. We've got F1 rights in Japan. You don't want to be sending it to Canada, because it does piss them off a little bit if you get it wrong. So they can see directly how they're contributing towards delivering the success for each market. So they know what they're pushing out into Germany versus into Japan versus into Canada. They can see that. They know how they're contributing. So when we talk to managers and leaders in these areas, talking about contribution, goals, objective setting, etc., it's never an easy thing, because they always want to keep it kind of loose. It's never quite ambitious enough. It's always safe. Makes it easier at the end of the year for the annual performance review, doesn't it? We don't have to have a tough conversation. So we've still got a role to support our people in pushing them and stretching them and saying, okay, how are we going to increase the quality? How can we increase the volume, etc.? How can we make it, now, there are some theories that are still really cool. How can we actually make it a smart goal? Still got the battle anybody about getting people to understand what a really good SMART goal is? I try and avoid them like the plague, by the way, otherwise people can pin me down. So that's, yeah, but I try and get other people to do that. But this is visible how you contribute. But the challenge is when you come to all the other parts of the business. So what if we're talking about I work in finance? Or what if I work in legal or HR or recruitment? Because I can't necessarily see my contribution ending up on that platform. I can't see how that increase or decrease or whatever in the number of subscribers, how I've contributed towards that. So that's the journey we started 12 months ago. how can we help people understand that they are contributing to all of this? So I want to start, and I think it was in the description, let's talk about recruitment. The very, very beginning. So that's the question they asked. We started talking to them and said, well, how am I contributing to that? I'm not doing anything to create some great content. I'm not filming an event. I'm not doing the scheduling or the planning or getting it through the transmission suites. You know, I'm not doing any of that stuff. So we said, yes, that's fine, but you are helping to deliver market success. And let's think about how. You are helping to evolve the experience, and they're like, I don't even touch the experience. I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. At that point, we said, right, we need to start telling some stories here. We need to start doing something a little bit different. So talking with our recruitment teams, we thought, okay, what do you help create at the front end? What they help create is an environment, it's a website, it's our careers website, but they write all of this content. And it's in line with our strategy. They talk to people before they even join the business about what our strategy is, about what DAZN is all about. And then we break it down into teams and say, right, okay, this is us as a business, but then come and look at this team. This is what this team does. This is how it contributes to the business. This is how it links to those horizon goals and ambitions that we have. So before someone even joins, we start to talk about how they're going to contribute. But our recruiters, our talent acquisition teams, they create this environment. So they're contributing before somebody even decides to join the business. We start to talk about the product. We talk about the different teams that enable the product. Some of those predominantly aren't those front and center. They're the ones that sit in the background. They develop the tech. They develop the platform. They fix stuff when things go wrong, because, hey, things go wrong. But they get it right, and they test, and they learn, and they fail, and they learn. And they're all contributing in that particular way. So they've created this amazing environment, this is talent attraction in a nutshell. If you've got somebody who's interested in our world and our type of business, it gives them everything they need before they join. So it's not just about, as well, the front end stuff, all the glossy, lovely, shiny stuff in that video. We talk about how the business support functions, HR, legal, finance, recruitment, all that, contribute before somebody even joins. So that's really important. This has evolved over the last 12 months to be a really engaging kind of place. For people to say yes. And we've seen that the volume of people applying for our roles massively, massively increase now because of this type of environment. So just to increase the volume of people, the pipeline of people that are interested in coming and talking to us, that is a success. That's a contribution in itself. Because the wider pool we have, you know, it doesn't even matter about the role they're applying for, really. Because there's another phrase I have, the person I recruited, never been in L&D before. Has anybody heard of the phrase culture fit? Yeah? We recruit people so they're a culture fit. Can I tell you not to? Can I ask you not to, politely? Can you go for culture add? Some of them you've not got. Being more inclusive, get more people to come along. Within 2 weeks, Mia has literally shared some ideas with me that I think, oh, I had 4 years doing this, 5 years nearly doing this, and she's bringing ideas that are just going to make things a lot easier for the way we do stuff. So, this is the first environment, but how do recruiters actually contribute to all of this? Yes, there's an environment like that. However, there's also all of this stuff. When they're talking with people, firstly, you have to do an effective sift. So you've got to go through all of those CVs. If we're increasing the volume, that capacity required to do that increases as well. So their workloads have gone up. So they do that. They support our managers. They do the interview training. They sift it down to a group of people that's manageable for a hiring manager to put themselves in front of these people and have a conversation. See if they're going to be that culture add. See if they do have the skills and experience at least to get going. Then we can develop and train the rest of the stuff. But whilst they're having these conversations with people, before the interview, they're still sharing that vision. They're sharing the strategy. They're talking about how their role is going to contribute to their function that will deliver their part of the Horizon's ambitions. So they're doing all of this stuff. And do you know what? They're making it really easy for our hiring managers to make decisions. And when they've done that, the bit that we needed to do to join it all up for them is, the example I remember is we had somebody who helped us to launch NFTs. Don't ask. My age, I ain't got a clue. Apparently they're pretty cool and people like them. But NFTs was something we launched in Japan. And apparently it's a big deal for DAZN. I've got to work out what it is first. But no, it is an important part. But the link I made was that somebody recruited them. Whoever did that and put that out there in Japan, whoever launched that out there in Japan, somebody recruited them. Somebody went through the whole sift, they found their CV, they had a conversation with them, they shared the vision, and now if we extend that across that whole employee journey, somebody then processed the administration, helped them on board, somebody did their first day induction, I should know who it is, but somebody did that and they kept them engaged, they kept them excited, they kept them wanting to do stuff. They obviously had clearly set goals and objectives to demonstrate how they're going to contribute. And boy, did they contribute, because we are going to do NFTs, these non-fungible tokens. I do know what I'm talking about sometimes. We are going to do those in different markets. But we test stuff. So we've done NFTs in Japan. We've done a merchandise store over in Germany. And these are all people who've been within the business less than a year. We're doing merchandising and ticketing over here in the UK as well. We're doing watch parties, all sorts of stuff that you can't get on a traditional TV channel. But it's about sharing that back with the person who recruited them. You're the person who brought them into the business. And when you start to share that story, they start to think, yeah, I am actually contributing now. I can see when I watch that video, that was Marco that did that over there. And I had that conversation with Marco. And finance and legal. You know, when it comes to all of our rights acquisitions, and they cost a fortune, by the way. You don't want to buy rights to sports on this planet, it costs you an absolute fortune. But our legal team, I love our legal team because they slow me down so much. They stop me doing stuff all the time, and I love it because they're keeping us safe. They're seeing stuff that I'm not an expert in. And through all of this, I've learned that I'm not an expert in so many things, and I love it. But there are people in our business that are. So I help by supporting them be their best and be the expert. I do love our legal team, by the way, because I've learned a heck of a lot about, sometimes I say, oh, we can't do that. Look at the liabilities and all of that. I'm not going to send that to Rachel. I sound like I know what I'm doing. So what we do is they find our next superstar. That's what they do. Then we go to that next stage. We're not going to go through the whole employee journey. The next stage, though, is that onboarding piece. So as opposed to sitting in here, and you're probably already feeling it, imagine if this were a 3-hour session. You'd be like, oh, I sod that, I'm not joining them. We don't sit them in a room for 3 hours. Okay, we create an environment where we can continue all of that messaging. We can continue the stuff around the shared vision and mission and what the strategy is and how the individual functions contribute. So this has come all the way down from shy now, getting to an individual level on day one. This is the environment we share with people. And that particular one, I wonder if this works. Oh, it does. Can you see that red thing? Never used that before. The new starters is a hub designed to give them everything they need. A little bit more of what they've already had, plus some new stuff. What's happening today? What's happening in your first week? What your manager's going to be doing? I hope they do, because the managers have got a hub up here where we tell them what they should be doing as well. But this is about self-paced, self-discovery, self-managed onboarding. Yes, we do have local face-to-face, in-person inductions as well. Of course we do. There are some site or market specifics that you need to have. There's some safety things and compliance things you need around the offices, so we do that. But in terms of learning, we empower them. So my role is to support people, is to give them the environment to do it. So whilst it was a bit of a woe is me, you know, the size of the function is stood right in front of you, it meant we had to be a bit cute how we do things. I can't run inductions for every territory every single month, every time we bring people on board. But the idea didn't come from me. The idea came from one of our internal comms people who was thinking about how they could contribute to the overall employee experience team. I was talking on a call about the challenges of capacity to deliver things face to face, and they said, well, why don't we just do that? Because I'd have loved that if I could have just done it on my own. And they'd been with us about 3 months. So it's about trusting the fact that your experts are in the business, and your expert might have only just joined you. But they'll have ideas. They could be experts in having ideas and seeing things that we've not seen before. So this is the environment that we have. And what we do then is we help them to continue with the vision and the mission. We share the story, we do that. We give the managers a version where they can think, right, how do I onboard somebody? Because managers don't continually onboard. They don't continually hire. It might be a year to 2 years to 3 years, even more, the gap between hiring a person and another person. When you're turbulent times, it might be 3 weeks. So this just gives managers a bit of a helping hand to understand how are they going to help their people contribute. But the final part, which is really important about this, is our performance framework. And I say framework very, very much on purpose. So this is a framework. We had a set your goals at the start of the year and put it onto the system. The HR system, by the way. Yeah, HR tell you, put your goals in the system. Have a quarterly review. Talk about how you're tracking. But we've not had a cascade from exec yet. We don't know what our goals are. Oh, shit, that happens every year. We've not fixed that one yet, have we? Okay, set your goals for Q2. Get yourself ready for H2. Put them in the system. So at the end of the year, we're going to ask you then to rate all of these goals and how you've performed. And by the time they get to September and we're saying, do your annual performance review, they look at their goals and think, that's not what I've been doing. That changed in April. So we changed it. We ripped it out. We turned the module off. They hated it. So bureaucratic. Loads of admin, writing goals, tracking my performance against the goals, submitting it to a manager for approval, then getting it rejected or approved back, and then having to have a conversation. It takes forever. All HR driven. So we just turned it off overnight. 2 months later, they said, where's the tool where we put our goals? I was like, for God's sake, you didn't like it 2 months ago. So we gave them a framework. It's the ACT framework. This is about ambitions. Shai's vision, strategy, mission, etc. is all there. It's all available. You can see it all the time. But in terms of my function, my role, what are my short-term ambitions? Pull that back. What am I doing in the next 3 months? That's all we need to do, because things are going to change. Yeah, things will change. You'll have to adapt. You'll have to change course. So what are my short-term ambitions? And then depending on your role, how do I pull that back from 3 months into this month? What am I doing? Yeah, what am I doing this month? And Mia, who's come on board recently, it's like down to the week level. What are my tasks this week to start showing that I'm contributing? And you know what? She's done it. She published 4 courses last week. She's only 2 weeks into the business. Globally available to everybody. And people are doing them. And she didn't even tell me.
I'm just conscious that we definitely want to fit some questions in before
cool.
the next session, so I'll give you a couple of minutes.
100%. I'll nail it. What's my next slide? Thank you. Yes. So what we do, though, is with these short-term ambitions, agreed locally with your manager, how am I contributing within the function? How do you keep this alive? Aim through a quarterly review. Because why should we wait 3 months to work out what I'm doing today? Ad hoc conversations, calling my boss, this is what I've done, this is blocking me, I think I need to change course, I need some help. Those ad hoc conversations are what keep it alive. But ultimately, we nail down what are the tasks I'm delivering, what am I owning, what's my destiny. I know the tasks I'm delivering to achieve my individual goals. But it's all kept alive through these conversations. It's a framework, and at the end of it, we said, capture it in a way that works for you. Is it Excel? Is it PowerPoint? Do you want to use Confluence? Do you want to use something posh on Jira that I wouldn't understand? The beauty of it is if I don't understand it but you do, that's what you use to capture your goals. And then we'll have a conversation at the end of the year. Check in every quarter, absolutely. But always know how you're tracking. Individuals here need to know how they're tracking. So that is what underpins that whole employee life cycle. So ripping out a lot of the bureaucracy and enabling and empowering and supporting people to understand how they contribute and capturing it in a way that works for them. Over to Rob.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you very much. So I'm very pleased to say we've got a bit of time for questions before the next session. Any burning questions? And there should be time for questions at the end. But anything jump to anybody? You don't get off that easily. I can just hand my mic.
Okay. Just very briefly, and thank you. This is I like the ACT. We have something similar, but the ACT, the platform, the framework. You mentioned capturing lessons learned when the knowledge when employees are leaving. How are you doing that?
So what we're doing is we're asking them to record a video or write a blog or just have a conversation with us. So Viv recorded, you go on our careers website, careers@dazone.com, it's not an advert, it's just so you can find it. You'll see a story by Viv, who was in my team, and she just talks about her whole story over the last 2 years before she decided to move on and go and work for Gallup, because we didn't have a role for her.
Very nice. Did I see a question up there at the back? We've got a mic coming to you there.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for that. Oh, that was loud.
That's bright.
Sounds like you're doing something quite interesting, creating a kind of highly autonomous, self-directed culture of learning where people own their own development. But as a digital business, presumably you're facing, if not now, then you will do some skills gaps. Do you have any perspectives on the tension between kind of letting people do what they want versus we need someone to be a Python expert in 3 weeks?
Great question. Absolute great question. What we've done is we've We used to have lots of third-party relationships with different suppliers who provide that kind of learning content or those type of learning opportunities. We've kind of aggregated that and brought that into the centre. My role has shifted now to not just be providing core content, it's to be working with people who I'm doing, and ironically I'm doing a talk about this afternoon downstairs. It's about how we can enable experts to have access to curating learning content for themselves. They know what they need for their teams. So my role is more about guidance and counsel around learning impact, how to engage people, but putting the learning and the content and the opportunity in the hands of the experts in the business to curate and create their own learning through this environment.
Very good. Any more questions before we move on to our next brilliant presentation? Great, I think we're good to go. So, my entry is Ben from Grant Thornton, and we shall have some time for questions at the end, I believe, as well. That'd be great, yeah.
Don't want to go over time. Are you welcoming me or thanking Steve? Which one is it? I'm good with either, to be honest. I shouldn't start with an apology, but I noticed people taking photos of slides. My slides are not worth taking photos of, it occurred to me, as I was watching Steve's. But I do have a purpose on a page slide which I can share if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, so happy to do that. So I work for Grant Thornton, a professional services company, 5,500, 6,000 people, depends where the wind is, looking after a whole range of stuff which I'll talk about in a second, largely UK based with a load of international partnerships and JVs and interesting stuff which I love getting involved in. I also look after a networking group, Talent Leadership Club, and there's a few people in the room who I recognise who are members, so great to see you. I'm going to talk about purpose. In the sense of, I'm going to give you a bit of context in terms of why we needed to do this piece of work, some of the decisions we made along the way, some of the context, and then some of the lessons I learned as part of this process. I really enjoyed it, first of all. It was a really cool piece of work. It was a privilege to get involved in this. Not many people, I think, get the chance to sort of kind of pull back the covers on an organisation of 6,000 people and really understand what it is that makes that organisation great. So I really, really enjoyed doing it. And I think the first thing, this word here, unearthing, is deliberate. Because what we wanted to do, and I'll come to the context in a second, is really unearth what our purpose was. This wasn't a define, it wasn't a create, it wasn't someone goes into a dark room and comes out and says, there you go, get on with it. This was very much us having a conversation with the organisation. So keep remembering the word unearthing, and that's important to us. It worked really well for us. I'm not going to say it works for everybody, but it was an important lesson for us. So we did a load of research in terms of organisations who created purposes. And we were chatting earlier about sort of top-down, bottom-up approach. It's kind of a bottom-up approach, but I don't like the word bottom-up because essentially it was kind of almost organisational in. We had lots of conversations with lots of people to understand what it is we stand for as an organisation. So it wasn't this kind of sort of like, let's go and create something, blue sky, perfect vision of the future. This was very much kind of us creating something that worked for us as an organisation. I would encourage you all to do that if you're doing this piece of work. Some of the things we benchmarked, so anybody from Unilever in the room? Good, I can get it wrong without fear of being sued. So them and others, taking a picture of a slide, it's obviously worth it. Them and others looked at the history. So I think the story is Chief Executive Unilever went into the archives to understand what it was they stood for back in the sort of like 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago, and then kind of created a version of that which represented them as an organisation and what they want to be going forward. That wouldn't have worked for us. The nature of professional services is you're a very diverse organisation doing lots of different things, and almost you kind of, if you know them, you kind of zero out at the end of the year. So we don't have like ongoing work in most of our businesses. Essentially, you start afresh every year. So therefore, you need to kind of create a purpose and something you stand for as a firm, which is essentially going to stand the test of time and is very kind of future and forward looking. So that's why we did this approach. I don't expect you to read that at all, and please don't take a photo of it because it's largely nonsense. But this shows you the challenge that I was faced with. So if you think about organisations like I used to work at Tesco, and you can pretty much state what Tesco does. We had 4 format stores. You repeat that format 100, 1,000 times around the country, etc., etc. It's quite an easy process. Also, I also used to work at GSK. Again, you've got R&D, you've got pharma, you've got vaccines, you've got different bits of the business. But again, largely do more, feel better, live longer. That's what we stood for at Grant Thornton. Sorry, at GSK. It's quite an easy approach. When you look at us, so you've got advisory, which is split into 3. You've got tax, and you've got audit and assurance. And then if you have a look at some of these, you've got split into 3, but then there's about 7 different subsections for each of them and about 5 different subsections for them. So it's almost impossible to create a purpose which is going to keep everybody happy within the organisation. More than that, actually, if you create a purpose which is going to tie someone's hands, and they have to stand up in court and say, well, hang on, the lawyer says, your purpose says this, but you did this, that's going to cause a whole world of problems. So we had to create something which was almost a credo rather than a purpose. That's kind of what we came to the conclusion of. I can't create a statement which is going to kind of, I'm unable to create a statement which is going to go across the whole organisation because it just simply won't work because of the diversity and the ability for me to cause problems for other people in the organisation. So that's kind of what we did. And throughout all of this, people kept telling us, we're not bloody Tony's Chocolonely, which is very tasty and I love it, but we're not saving the world, and we're not Patagonia. Again, we're not saving the world in the unique way they do. We are a professional services firm which makes sure that there is confidence in accounts. We do organisational and individual tax, and we do a whole range of advisory stuff which goes across the globe, from collecting money from bad guys who've taken it, to advising businesses around floating, to human capital work around sort of how do you do an MBA with Cranfield, for example. So there's such a range of stuff. So you can't create kind of one saving the world type purpose which is going to keep everybody happy, and that isn't us. People would have smelled a rat and said, no, that's just a load of nonsense. We're not going to buy into that. So we had to create something authentic that worked for us. So the other context, it won't have escaped you. You noticed there was a pandemic. Bang in the middle of this piece of work. So actually, when I kicked this off, and we were at Kin & Co. to do it, we were having discussion groups in nice rooms. So I remember getting on trains to Birmingham. We'd sit in front of a room with people a bit like this, with circular rather than as you are, and we'd have a conversation around, okay, what do we stand for as an organisation? What makes Grant Thornton a great place to work for, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's visceral. I can remember getting the train to Cambridge one day, having just heard about this disease coming from China, and got to Cambridge, got into the office, and then somebody's brother's cousin's dog's sister had just come back from a holiday, and somebody on the plane had COVID. So we debated, what do we do? And we kind of just cancelled the whole thing. Sent the project manager, he didn't even get into the office. I said, look, turn around, I don't want you getting this. I took a photo and then just disappeared off back to Reading. And then we just sat there for a month and figured, what do we actually do? And we flipped it all online. And it was one of the best things we did. Because if you have a conversation with 5,500 people about I'm getting goosebumps, it was quite weird, about what makes your firm a great place to work for in the middle of a pandemic, when everyone's going, oh shit, I don't know how to behave, act, and what's the future going to look like, it was really kind of cathartic. Everyone really valued the chance to have a chat about the organisation and what we stand for. And chatting with our chief exec afterwards, he said it's one of the best things he's done in his time as chief exec, is actually have conversations around purpose and what we stand for. So I would encourage you to kind of, actually online gave us loads of benefits because it meant it was much more inclusive. We could get in touch with the people in Aberdeen who didn't want to fly down to Glasgow for a 90-minute chat around purpose. I've got a job to do. But if I do it online, I can bring in everybody from all around the Grant Thornton globe. It's the UK, but we're global in that sense, who could input to this conversation. So that was kind of the context. So that was the challenge I was faced with. This is probably the only slide that's vaguely worth taking a picture of, but I'm not going to hold you to it. So there were different phases to it. So the first thing was a listening phase. Essentially, we got, 1,500 people in physical and virtual rooms just to kind of vent. Tell us what's good about the firm, tell us what's not good about the firm, just get it off your chest. The logic behind that was because we went to a build phase after we'd done the analysis, and the build phase was very much kind of, look, tell us stories about the organisation and what is really good about the organisation. Why do you continue to work here? Had we not done the venting phase before that, they'd have used this to kind of get stuff off their chest, and it would have undermined the success of that. So listening phase, where we just had lots of conversations in a room with as many people as we could. We then analysed all that, pulled together a whole load of themes and information, and then shared that back with the firm, and then we had a conversation around stories. So tell us the stories that you have that makes this a great place to work. That was really good fun. I just forget purpose. I would recommend anybody just has a conversation with the people about why do you carry on working here, what makes it a great place to work. It's brilliant fun. It's really cool. So that was fun. We then distilled a whole load of data crunching. I wish I had some natural language processing stuff to do it with, but a whole load of data crunching to essentially distill all those stories, pull out a bunch of keywords, and then say, look, this is what we think we stand for as an organisation. So we came up with sort of 6 or 7 different options and kind of put them to the firm. And we did that via a kind of it could have died in its arse. We could have gone horribly wrong. We did an all-company meeting, and we said to 4,500, 5,000 people, look, here's the work we've done, here's the journey we've been on. It wasn't a surprise, because we've been engaging as they go. And here's the conclusion. Here's your three options. Which one do you want to vote on? Which one do you want to choose? So we had, I think it was 90% of people chose the option that we liked, which is good. 5% said they're a bit meh, and 5% said they couldn't get behind it. So I'm taking that as 95% engagement and buy-in to the process we went through. So That was that. And then the embed phase, which is massive. So embed is ongoing and never ending. It's including everything, every training course we do, all the orientation. It's interesting because you were talking about purpose, Rob, about it's a kind of an external tool to go to your clients, and we don't do that. But this is our little special thing. So the only reason you'd see the purpose of Grant Thornton is essentially kind of on a recruitment website and in conversations with people if they want to disclose what it is. Actually, this is our thing. We've got a branding team who do all sort of our go beyond stuff, which is brilliant, and we made sure the branding stuff aligned with the purpose stuff. But this is essentially ours. It's an internal thing that we use to understand who we are as an organisation. So embedding was very much an internal thing. So every conversation, it gets referenced in loads of places, and I work very, very, very closely with our comms team to make sure that the stuff they do is around stories, and we make sure that the stories that we put out on our intranet are related to our purpose, so it kind of reinforces it. So I would keep encouraging you to do that. Good fun. So, stories. I'm just going to tell you a couple, because they're really cool, and there were thousands. There were thousands and thousands and thousands. The two that come to mind, actually, one is, and because this was peak COVID, actually I'll do three briefly. The one that kept coming up over and over again, which seemed to reinforce decisions we'd made, was around furlough. We chose not to take furlough money. I think we were one of the first professional services to do so. I think we kind of forced the hand of everybody else not to take furlough money as a result. And it kept coming up from our people that actually that felt like the right thing to do. And history has proved it was the right thing to do because actually most professional services firms had it sounds crass, but had a particularly good COVID. So a lot of organisations did really well because of the efficiencies and the need from clients, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact we didn't take furlough money kind of put a sort of a line in the sand, like this is the kind of firm we are. We're not going to take public money to back up our people. So we put people out, we cut down wages and salaries and various things, and we paid all that money back at the end of the process because it was the right thing to do. So that was one. The other one was, I remember chatting with our VAT folks who got a phone call from some doctors who were in a hospital who were looking to start a business to create some PPE, which essentially shielded them from patients who had COVID. And they got nowhere to go with it. So just literally phoned up our VAT folks who said, like, how do we get VAT advice on this? And there was no money in it whatsoever because it was too embryonic and whatever else. But it was the right thing to do. So they helped them, but they didn't just help them. They introduced them to about 6 other areas in the firm who then all helped them and created something off the back of it, which was really nice and really good to see. And the final one was, and I really like this bit, we've got a particular specialism in tracking down money from people who've defrauded somebody. Which is really cool. So if an organisation has been defrauded, our people have got roots and an ability to go and track that money down and then bring it back to that person. We got a phone call a couple of years ago pre-COVID from an old boy in his 70s who'd been defrauded, one of those phone call things, and lost all his money. And it's one of those, like, again, there's no money in it for us in a firm, but it's a really nice thing to do, and it feels like the right thing to do. So they went after and got this guy's life savings back purely because it felt like a nice, right thing to do. So, and it's taught me that there's so many nice bits of work in the organisation, so many good people doing good work. Because you look at a professional services firm, you think it's quite bland. Actually, there's not an awful lot to it. But when you really get under the skin of some of the things that people do within our firm and every other firm, there is so much good work that happens that it kind of goes unseen and goes unassumed as well. So it was useful to do that as a piece of work. We created a little video. This is Sarah and my team with a lovely Welsh lilt.
Over the last 18 months, we've listened to people from every corner of our firm to better understand who we are and what we stand for, to understand what motivates and drives people at Grant Thornton, what guides our actions and decision-making, why people should choose to join Grant Thornton, and why clients believe that we go beyond. We held 50 workshops involving more than 1,600 people and gathered over 800 stories that inspired us and made us feel proud to be a part of Grant Thornton. It wasn't about creating something new. It was about unearthing what we already knew about our firm and just hadn't articulated yet. And what we found is that our purpose has been there all along, guiding us through our big decisions and enabling us to deliver a service to clients that we are proud of. Helping us to answer the question, why Grant Thornton? For our clients, it's about how we go beyond for them. For our people, it's about the kind of firm we are, who we are and what we stand for. Not necessarily being purpose-driven or purpose-led, but being purposeful in what we do. And by putting a name to it, we can ensure that we are all united, inspired, connected to, and guided by who we are and what we stand for every day. That's what makes us Grant Thornton.
So that was an internal thing we did. That's our purpose. It may not mean something to you, but it means something to me, and it means something to the firm, because we've got stories that back it up. So we do what's right ahead of what's easy. It fits so much of what we do. It's more a credo and a kind of a guiding principle, and we use it for making decisions as well. But it works really well within the firm. I'm going to give you some lessons, and then probably hand over to questions. So the top one is so important. Like, I cannot overstate how important the top one is. The journey is as important as the destination. The fact that we had conversations, during COVID, made it even more important, but we had that many conversations with people across the firm was so important. People still remember them. I think the other thing I've learned, a side lesson, is our turnover's, what is it, about 18% at the moment? We're going to have to do it again, because the level of people coming in, because we've expanded by about 1,000 people, and the level of turnover means that we have to keep doing this. So we need to do it again. And actually, my task for 2024 is to have a look at our culture. So and that's going to be a bit, purpose was very much kind of like, okay, what do we stand for? I'm not going to influence it. I'm just going to listen and then reflect it back to the organization. Culture for me is more about, okay, actually, what's the optimum culture? What are we now? How can I kind of course correct it a little bit? So that will give me the opportunity to have another conversation with sort of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people in the firm about what we stand for as well. It needs to be authentic. We didn't compromise. Hopefully, I don't think we got the feedback that it was kind of too bland. Actually, people seem to it resonated with people and they liked it, particularly with some of the generational influences we've got coming into the organisation. That like 35%, 65% of our firm are under 35. That was one of the drivers for doing this, is we've got people all the time saying, look, what do we stand for as a firm? It might not be that important to some of the sort of the more senior, older folks, but actually we've got a whole organisation coming in every year, sort of 400, 500, 600 trainees every year saying, look, what do you stand for as a firm? And look, okay, we're not Tony Chocolonely, but actually that feels like a fairly good thing. And if you back that up with stories, it's a nice attraction process when you go into universities. Embed into everything thereafter. It's like I said it already, but you can't just sort of have it as a standalone thing. Go, there you go, get on with the organisation. The embedding was as important as the process as well. And don't shy away from difficult conversations. If you think about it, we do what's right ahead of what's easy. Well, I can't mention clients and stuff, but we did walk away from clients off the back of some of the conversations. We said, actually, that client isn't a particularly great client. Do we really want to be working with them? And also, it gives us the ability to have discussions around things that are bigger than that as well, around I&D, around which countries you operate in. There's all that sort of conversation. So it provides a bit of a framework and a decision-making tool, or at least a tool for provoking debates around what kind of a firm do we want to be and what kind of decisions do we make as a firm. So that's probably it from me, yeah. Thank you very much.
I think probably fair to describe that. If you need to do a piece of work on purpose within your organisation, you've just been given a playbook on how to do it. I think that's absolutely superb. So we've got time for questions now. So I can see lots of hands going. I think the gentleman just here down the middle was first. I think probably yes, that gentleman there first.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I just have a very quick question. You mentioned about how you have to do this purpose-driven, purposeful conversation with Grant Thornton soon in 2024 because you have more people coming in. Mm-hmm. I'm curious about how do you have such conversations without desensitizing people who already have contributed to such conversations before. So my experience of this kind of conversations are, after a while, people get very desensitized about talking about purpose. People feel as though, like, I've contributed to this conversation before, nothing's going to change anyway. You know, how do you navigate that inertia to contribute? Yeah, just curious about your perspective on that.
Honestly, I don't know, is probably the answer. I know as part of the orientation, we have conversations around purpose and people bring out stories and we share stories. So that doesn't double up on people who've already done it. You're bang on though. I don't think it's the kind of thing that you can just sort of like, right now it's conversation time around why we're such a good organisation, because you're right, that is contrived and people will not buy into it. I think for me that's why the conversation I want to have around culture, and then we'll do something around leadership development off the back of that. I think you've got to find natural insertion points. So it happens naturally without feeling contrived. And so it's further pieces of work where they kind of, they have it done to them and with them without necessarily realising it, so it doesn't feel kind of like we've staged it and contrived it. Yeah, thank you. I don't know the answer. I'm trying to figure it out.
Also in your question, yeah, and then we'll come to the gentleman there afterwards. But yeah, I think in your question as well, you mentioned how do you encourage people to contribute when they see that things don't change off the back of that contribution? And I think there is an answer as well, is that the employees do see things changing off the back of the contribution, and that they're being listened to, and that encourages people to do it again. Brilliant. Thank you, gentleman there on the right.
Yeah, thanks to both speakers. Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Ben. What I'm hearing from both of you that sort of underlines everything is real trust in your employees and the people that work for you. Trust to unearth purpose, trust to set their own directions. I work in the public sector, and what I find from a lot of senior and mid-level managers is a lack of trust in the employees. I'm wondering if you've ever encountered that in your careers, and how we can change the culture at that level. Because I think our CEO trusts everyone, and I think there's a lot of great people in the organisation doing jobs lower down the scale, but there seems to be like a lack of trust and a lack of willingness to engage with people on that level. So any thoughts on that would be cool.
So we had this thing when we were prepping for this, where if it was a difficult conversation, I'd turn to you and say, what are your thoughts on that?
Firstly, role modeling and the way we work with leaders. I think the trust, I personally believe trust comes when people see you as being comfortable being vulnerable. Showing vulnerability, showing that it's okay to ask that I need some help, showing that I need to sometimes involve other people to help me make a decision or to help get the right output, as you were talking earlier on. So vulnerability is what breeds trust, in my opinion. A lot of other things as well. But sometimes you just have to be the role model and start calling things out as well. Because if you don't have that vulnerability and you don't have people being open and wanting to engage with their people and involve them in the decision-making process, that will span across their peer group as well. So if you're doing that at a leadership level, if you're doing that at a management level, you're creating silos, you're not having effective collaboration, people won't be vulnerable in front of each other in a peer group. How's that ever going to get into the organisation? So someone's got to go first. And I am the first. I talk about experts in the business, and I like the fact that I'm not an expert. I tell everybody in the business that I'm not an expert, but I know people who are. So I'm showing a level of vulnerability that says, do you know what, if we're going to achieve this, I need your help. And hopefully that starts to breed, and we talk about that story with, and they're saying, yeah, we're doing this now. We can see our teams now feeling as though they're becoming more accountable, and they're more prepared to stick their hand up and say, I need some help, I've got a problem. So go in first.
I'd caveat my answer with I'm not an expert in psychological safety or anything, so it's probably more an experience thing. I have worked in and for the public sector, and it's a different beast, so I empathise with where you're coming from. We did have a few, it's a very different environment, but we did have a few people who were sort of like, I don't necessarily want to get involved in this, and there's two ways we dealt with them. One was, that's fine, you don't have to. But by the nature of them not getting involved, they saw everyone else was getting involved, and some of them gradually got involved. And I suspect some people, when we did make a decision, actually, this isn't the kind of firm I want to be in, I'm going to disappear, which is fine. The other thing is you've got kind of one shot at it. So if you're going to do this kind of work, you need to say, look, and here's the outcomes, and here's what we'll deliver, and you need to make sure you definitely deliver on those things, because if we hadn't delivered on it, then they would have backed up their... So there were a few conversations with people, look, just give us a chance, let us do it. If it doesn't work, you can say, I told you so, blah, blah, blah. But prove us wrong, and we'll get on with it and see how it goes.
Thank you. And I think we're here on the right there, gentleman with the glasses.
Thank you very much to both of you. And I guess this is a question that you could both answer, but I think starting with I know you didn't want to say the word bottom down, purpose, but basically, how did you approach the executive committee, C-suite, with this purpose that you'd unearthed by talking to all these people, and how did you get them to support it? And one of the issues that I've seen in the past is we come up with a really great purpose, and then somebody in a position of power flies in the face of that purpose. how do we get them to come along, or try not to make excuses about it?
I think I'm not going to give you the answer that will be useful, because I was lucky. So the part of it, we're still being recorded. One of the other reasons we did this work was because Dave, our chief exec, had the classic strategy pyramid and it had the word purpose on the side, and he went to us and said, oh crap, I've done no work around purpose, so you need to do something. So actually, it was driven by the chief exec as well. And it wasn't bottom up, because it was the SLT were as involved, and every level of management were involved, because it was a democratized conversation approach. So everybody got involved and introduced it, and they didn't really get a choice because the SLT were involved, so therefore they just said it's the three-line whip, you're all getting involved. I do know, without going into specifics because I can't, but I do know there were behaviours exhibited by senior partners which weren't in line with this. And I do know there have been conversations that have gone on behind the scenes to say, hang on, we've done this piece of work and what you're doing isn't necessarily in line with what we talked about, and we course corrected a bit. So it was really handy having senior leadership support to be able to sort of have those, because I can't have a chat with some of these partners because they just won't listen to me. But if the chief exec or the people manager comes and says it, then it's going to cause an impact. So I was quite fortunate, because it was, everyone was brought into it.
From my perspective, just doing stuff really and not seeking permission. Seek forgiveness, not permission. Be brave. And if you know it's the right thing, someone's hand's going to have to be forced somewhere. They're either going to tell me to stop, you're wrong, fine, I'll take that as feedback. Or, shit, this is moving now, we better get on board. Seek forgiveness, not permission.
So Ben, I was going to congratulate Grant Thornton's board on their vision and their trust of their employees for saying this incredibly important thing. You know, you guys do it because we trust you so much, but I love the fact that it was just like, oh crap, I haven't done that.
Yeah, don't quote me on that.
So the lady here in the blue top.
Hello, thank you so much both. I have a question on attracting talent. So when you have companies such as yours, where all of this work has been done and people feel they have a purpose in their jobs, how do you communicate that externally? I feel like from a job seeker perspective, approaching companies, it's always very difficult to understand which organizations actually do have attention to purpose. So I wonder, like, how do you build that trust, and how do you get an interested, like really like superstar job seeker to convert and actually submit an application over to you?
Shall I go on this one first? Shall I stand up? Sorry, I can't quite see you. The careers website that we've got, that's just one environment that people can find us, and we start to share stuff around, yes, the vision, the mission, the strategy, and all of those things. We talk about we're really cool because we're in sports, team spirit, characteristics, the values. So we talk about that in there as well. But what we also do is very, very active social channels. So on LinkedIn, on Instagram, working with partners, my G work, and into different communities and different groups as well, where when we talk in there, we talk about the same stuff. And one of the coolest things that I've seen over recent months is somebody who joined the business a couple of years ago as an apprentice is now creating loads. Please go and have a look. She's creating loads and loads of content. She's going to events. She's posting stuff on LinkedIn. And just the fact that she's doing some behind-the-scenes footage at an AJ fight, the way she talks about the business is just demonstrating without having to say, oh, it's ambitious, supportive, passionate, inventive, all. She's just demonstrating it. Just finished an apprenticeship. We just said, go and do stuff. Eva Irvine on LinkedIn. I've not told her that I'm going to do this, by the way. So she's going to know I'm away. But Eva Irvine, she's just doing some stuff that's really unconsciously clever about promoting what we stand for at Design. Sorry, I stood up because I couldn't see you there.
I don't know if you had anything.
I mean, it's almost identical. The only thing I think we have different is that we bring in experienced hires and early careers. So you've got two tracks there. So you need to make sure that the recruiters are essentially your mouthpiece, the front of the organisation, and they do it in a way which is appropriate for a school leave age 16 or a graduate age, 18 or 21 versus a 45-year-old senior bloke looking to earn 250 grand. So there's a different conversation, but essentially there's got to be authentic and talk about it in the right way.
Great. Who was next? I think we'll go. Actually, we'll just go there because the mic's there, and then we'll come to you next. Yeah.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Hi. Hi, this is a question for Ben. In my experience of working in organisations, the organisation's purpose is probably what you think it is. So there's almost a sort of, you can go on a kind of long journey to find purpose, and actually you could probably, guess what the purpose is by just kind of writing something on a piece of paper. But did you find that the sort of journey itself was part of the purpose? So, the kind of journey of talking to people and getting an understanding, like in the video where it said, understanding what your world of work is like and deep diving into people's environments. Was that sort of, the journey was just as important as the outcome? Is that kind of part of why you were doing it?
Yeah, there's two answers to that. One is a simple yes, the process was really, really important. The process is also really important because, so I just spotted Belinda and my team at the back who's laughing at me. I had senior partners lobbying for this should be our purpose. So what did we have? One of the ones that didn't make it was we ensure strengthening confidence in capital markets. So actually going through the journey enabled us to say, look, whoever you are, you might think our purpose should be this, but actually our people have said this and they voted on it, get behind this. So it was really handy to be able to have that evidence trail to say, look, your purpose is wrong. This is what the firm's purpose is.
I thought it was really interesting that you said that your big project for 2024 was to start working on culture. I think through the process you've been through, you've kind of already started working on that.
Completely.
It's all part of the journey. The lady here.
Hi there. I just want to ask, it was previously asked as well, but what practical tips and mechanisms have you used in order to ensure that your vision and strategy is communicated to employees in a way that is easily consumable? For example, I work in a team of 100 L&D professionals. 60 of them are developers and then the rest managers. So last year attending the Learning Technologies conference, I heard about the championships programs, right, and how important they are. So I created 2 groups of champions, which they're actually evangelizing principles of my program, etc. So just wanted to ask you what other mechanisms I can use to further enforce change.
Okay, you've got 100 people in your L&D team. Can I borrow some, please? That'd be so cool.
Who do you work for? Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, right. So we're all in the same world, which is cool. See, I stood up there. I got all passive aggressive then, didn't I? It's like, probably other conversations we can have as well. I'll sit down. So what we did is you talked earlier on about what insertion points and making sure that the message is continually there. One of the main things was we did a lot of work pre-pandemic around those team spirit characteristics, which is the ambitious, brave, supportive, inventive, and all of those things, the values. And then that kind of stagnated, the launch of that stagnated through the pandemic. There were other things that had to be done. We then came back 18 months later and thought, is this still valid? But it made us reassess, how do we keep this alive now? We're not going to do another big launch. We're not going to do another comms campaign. But how do we get this message out there constantly? So Ben mentioned earlier on, it's about just making sure that message is consistent in every avenue that we've got. Any comms we put out, any training content that we create, any town halls that we have. Any time we've got our CEO or our CTO or COO, I'm not sure what all of those mean now because our COO is looking after HR. What's the O for? But ensuring that they're on message every single time as well and they understand how we're doing this to try and deliver their vision, mission and strategy. And they see the link between the fact that what they say isn't what we're telling people here. But if they articulate things in a certain way, we know that people will understand it this way in that function, that way in that function. So part of our team's role now is to work with C-suite and say, for Sandeep as a CTO, we will help you set your kind of message and tone for each of your monthly calls. For Pete over in marketing, it's a completely different tone. Completely different words, but it's in line with what Shy needs because they speak a different language in marketing to the way in tech. So it's about helping leaders understand they need to translate the vision, mission and strategy in every communication they put out, in everything that they do, setting their objectives, setting their goals, town halls, the whole lot. So that our role has expanded to now be the kind of guiders and advisors and counsel in how they communicate with the business as well. So what we do, every insertion point possible, consistency in the message, supporting senior leaders in a business to how can you articulate it in a way that means something for your people.
Very nice. Do you have any more questions? I think there's a gentleman just there at the back.
Yeah, maybe just to build on that particular idea of bringing from the top down the messaging. Are you doing anything to sort of empower then the working level to stand by that guidance? And like the context I'm thinking is, like in the context of what we do, we're always looking at transforming product management teams, and they're trying to figure out how does this feature or thing I'm doing translate into subscriber growth, organizational transformation, whatever it is. But they get into the day-to-day, and then the next drive-by executive meeting or a salesperson, sales leader comes in and demands some change. There's often not a good mechanism to retrench and say, strategically, this is the outcome we're going after. What kind of things are you doing in your organization to help those working level people hold on to that executive message and then use it day to day to defend their priorities?
Working with -1 group, working with -2 group, working with -3 group, and saying, right, what's your part in now getting that translation down the next level, down the next level? Hi, Tyler, by the way, we met yesterday, so thank you for the question. Yeah, it's not about saying, okay, we take that and then we just spread a global blanket message. It's about putting the effort in with the leadership groups and saying, you've got to take it down now, so your number twos get it. You've got to take it down now, so they're going to get it. And the further you go into the organization, the wider it's going to get. So this definitely is still top down the way we're approaching that. However, when we're starting the new starter journey, the onboarding thing, we're talking about inclusion. Everybody's got a voice. You can talk up, etc. These are what we stand for. So we talk to people in setting their probationary goals with their manager. How are you going to make sure those goals are ambitious? How are you going to make sure that you're being brave? Because ideas can happen on day 3. How are you going to be inventive? How are you going to show you've had an idea and share your thoughts? So we started there in terms of hopefully enabling them to feel as though they're safe. You mentioned psychological safety. They're safe to have ideas. They're safe to fail and learn. They're safe to be brave. So yeah, that is actually a two-way thing.
The only thing I'd add, it's not, I don't think this is relevant for us in our organisation. I mean, because the nature of partnerships is they're an election model. So chief exec gets 4 years and then another 4 years if they do it, and then that's it, you're done, whatever you want to do next. So I mean, the chief exec is definitely the chief exec. They're in charge and what they say goes. But I've been in corporate environments whereby you can change purpose and culture quite quickly and easily by buying a bit of the business, selling a bit of the business, or a chief exec comes in with a dose of salt through the organisation and does it differently. Whereas we've kind of got more cultural symbols in place which create more inertia. So things like an inclusion advisory board. It's going to be quite hard for a chief exec to come in and say, actually, no, the new one, as and when that changes, I don't want that anymore, because it's almost, they're there based on a mandate from their partners, but also the organisation. So it would be difficult for them to sort of undo too much too quickly. So I can't answer it as readily, I'm afraid.
Any more questions? Brilliant. Well, I always think that's a good sign of great presentations where there's loads of questions and engaged audience. So thank you to you all. Thank you especially to our speakers. And enjoy the rest of the conference.